It's funny how silence can hurt more than screaming. That's what I told myself the day my daughter-in-law stood in my living room, her arms crossed like a fence around her heart, and told me I could no longer see my grandson. No tears, no raised voices, just that cold, polite tone people use when they've already decided you don't matter anymore. I remember the smell of lemon polish still fresh on the coffee table. I'd just finished wiping everything down because Saturday was always the day my grandson came over. I had little animal crackers in a bowl, his little blanket folded on the couch, his favorite blue sippy cup washed and waiting. And then she walked in. No grandson in sight. "Susan," she said softly, as if she was afraid too much emotion might make me believe she cared. "From now on, I think it's best we keep some boundaries." Boundaries. That word felt like a knife sharpened on manners. I just nodded at first, because when you're blindsided, your body answers before your heart catches up. "May I ask why?" I whispered, though deep inside I already knew pride, control, insecurity, jealousy. She didn't hesitate. "I think you interfere too much." And there it was, a woman half my age telling me I was too much for the child I used to rock to sleep, who used to call me his little miracle, his everything. My son, my only child, stood behind her, eyes down, hands in his pockets like a boy caught between two adults, like he wasn't a grown man, like he didn't have a spine. I looked at him, searching for help, for fairness, for just one word. "Mom, this isn't right." But he stayed silent. And silence, my dear, is agreement wearing disguise. "I understand," I murmured, though nothing inside me understood. And they left. No hug, no chance to say goodbye to my baby boy, my grandson, just the soft click of my front door closing like a coffin lid. When the sound died, so did something inside me. A grandmother's heart is quiet, but when it breaks, it echoes. Normal life. Before the storm. Back then, my life was simple in that small town tucked between rolling hills and old oak trees. People waved when they passed by your house. The grocery clerk knew when you switched brands of cereal. The mailman asked how your garden was doing. I liked it that way. Predictable, peaceful, warm. I raised my son Matthew in this house. Just the two of us. Me and him against the world, as I used to say. His father left when he was 3, right after promising he'd never go anywhere. Funny how men can say forever like it's a weather forecast, always changing. But Matthew, he was my constant, freckle-faced, always chasing fireflies, always promising he'd never leave me like his daddy did. We had our routines, you know? Saturday pancakes, his with chocolate chips, mine with blueberries, summer lemonade stands on the corner, Sunday walks to church where he'd tug on my sleeve and whisper, "Is it almost over?" while pretending to nap on my shoulder. I used to brush his hair before school because he never quite got the back part to lie flat. And every morning he'd tell me, "You're the best, Mom." I kept those memories tucked somewhere close, like a warm blanket over old bones. He grew up kind, gentle, soft-spoken the way only boys raised by tired, loving mothers can. He got a job at the bank when he finished college, moved back home to save money, and every night we'd eat dinner at the little round table in the kitchen, the same one I still use now. He'd talk about stocks and interest rates while I stirred gravy and pretended to understand. We were happy. Not rich, not flashy, just comfortable. Then he met her, Amber. Pretty, polished, and modern in that way people are when they think small towns are just stepping stones to real life. She had shiny hair, manicured nails, and a smile that you couldn't quite tell was real or practiced. She worked at a real estate office, wore heels to the grocery store, called my son Babe in that sugary way some women use to mark territory instead of affection. The first time he brought her over, she shook my hand like she was closing a deal, not meeting family. Her perfume filled my living room, vanilla and something sharper underneath, something a little hungry. I wanted to like her, Lord knows I did. I tried real hard, because mothers of sons, we learn early. Love 'em, raise 'em, pray someone else doesn't take them away and rewrite who they are. At first, I told myself it was just an adjustment. Women can sense each other, sometimes before a man ever does. But when they got married, quick, quiet, courthouse wedding, no family invited, I felt something slip, like holding a rope that suddenly goes slack. Still, I stayed gracious. I baked pies, offered help, smiled through little comments about modern parenting and not trying to cling to the past. When she got pregnant, I cried like my heart opened up just to pour joy into the world. I bought baby shoes before she even showed, crocheted blankets in soft yellows and mint greens, held my son's hands across my kitchen table, and told him he was going to be a wonderful father. My grandson, Jacob, was born in spring, when dogwoods bloom and everything feels possible again. I held him in the hospital, tiny and pink and perfect, and I whispered, "Welcome home, little love." I thought the world was beginning again. I didn't know a storm was coming. A storm with a polite smile, perfect eyeliner, and a plan I wasn't supposed to see. But I did see, and I never forgot. Because when Amber banned me from Jacob, she didn't know I already knew her secret. A secret that would change everything. And darling, sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply waiting for truth to ripen.
I didn't sleep that night. I kept walking through my quiet house, touching the things that used to feel alive when Jacob's tiny hands were on them. The stuffed elephant on the shelf, the rocking chair by the window, the little knitted socks still folded in the drawer. I brewed tea just to hold something warm, but warmth can't fix a wound that deep. It only reminds you what comfort used to feel like. People think grief is loud, crying, yelling, begging, but true grief is quiet. It sits with you like a shadow, patient and heavy. For 2 weeks, I didn't hear a word from them. Not a text, not a call. Matthew didn't come by, didn't check in, didn't even apologize. I used to think silence got easier when your children grow up. It doesn't. But pain teaches patience, and I learned long ago, when people turn away from you, you don't chase. You breathe. You wait. You trust the truth will show itself, one way or another. And sure enough, it did. The first crack in the perfect picture. It started with a phone call. From Matthew. His voice was tight, like he was holding something in. "Mom, hey, how are you?" I could hear guilt. Guilt has a sound, like someone dragging their feet through gravel. "I'm all right." I lied, because mothers lie to protect their children, even when they're grown. "How's Jacob?" He hesitated just a second too long. "He's good. He's good." I closed my eyes. "That's wonderful to hear." There was a silence. Thick, awkward, unspoken. "You need something, baby?" I asked gently. He exhaled, shallow and short. Amber's stressed. The baby's fussy. She just needs space for now. It's not you, it's just new mom stuff. I smiled to myself, though he couldn't see. I understand. But I didn't believe it, not for a minute. All right, Mom. I'll call again later, okay? Okay, you take care. When the call ended, I didn't cry, I didn't break. I just sat there at my kitchen table, smoothing the little floral tablecloth with my palm, and thought, God, please help me stay patient. Because I already knew something was off. This wasn't new mom stress. This wasn't boundaries. This was distance. Deliberate, calculated distance. And when someone draws a line that hard, that sudden, that cold, it's not because of what you did. It's because of what they're hiding. The neighbor's words. A few days later, I ran into our neighbor, Mrs. Dalton, while trimming the rose bushes. She was the type who knew everything about everybody. Not in a nosy way, but the way small towns just work. "How's that new grandbaby of yours?" she asked with her bright morning voice. "Oh, he's precious," I said softly, trimming a stubborn thorn. She nodded knowingly. "Amber's been looking tired. I saw her down at the pharmacy last week with a man. Tall fellow, bit younger. They looked real serious. I think he was trying to calm her down about something." I paused only for a second, not long enough to show surprise, just long enough to mark the moment. "Oh," I asked, voice calm. "A coworker, maybe?" She shrugged. "Could be, but they weren't acting like coworkers." That was all she said before waving goodbye and shuffling off with her poodle. I stood there with the pruning shears still in my hand, feeling the sun on my back and the breeze rustle through the hydrangeas. A man with Amber. Comforting her. My heart didn't jump to conclusions. Lord knows I've seen enough life to know innocence wears strange faces sometimes. But inside me, a little flag went up. Amber didn't like being questioned. Amber didn't like sharing control. And Amber had a temper she tried real hard to hide behind polite smiles and perfect outfits. If she was unraveling, it wasn't over nothing. And if there was another man in her world, even just emotionally, that explained plenty. But I didn't go calling Matthew. I didn't snoop. Love had taught me one thing better than anything. The truth doesn't need chasing. It walks right up when the time is right. The baby monitor slip. 2 weeks later, just when the ache of missing Jacob felt like a second skin, fate knocked on my door in a way I never expected. A package with their name on it, delivered to my porch by mistake, probably the new delivery driver mixing up addresses again. I didn't open it, of course, but as I picked it up, I noticed the return label. Baby Nest Audio and Video Monitor, Replacement Warranty. Replacement. Meaning the original one broke. Meaning they had a baby monitor issue recently. And that stirred something I'd forgotten. A conversation months earlier, just before Jacob was born. Amber had been fiddling with their first baby monitor system while sitting at my dining table. I remembered because she'd grumbled that the thing never paired right. She'd said it so casually, frustrated, distracted. But in that moment on my porch, holding that package, something clicked. If it never paired right, then whose voice did it connect to? Not theirs. Not their devices. Someone else's. Phones, laptops, tablets, anyone in range. And in a small town neighborhood, that narrowed possibilities. I looked across the street where a red pickup truck sat parked, the same one I'd seen recently in front of their house when Amber visited her mom. A young man lived there, maybe mid-20s, single. Came and went at strange hours sometimes. Their Wi-Fi range probably hit his place. Was that who Mrs. Dalton saw with Amber?
No proof yet, just dots waiting to connect. But my stomach tightened, not with jealousy, not with anger, but with the clarity that comes when you suddenly see a picture forming where before there were only shapes. Amber's panic wasn't about me. Her boundaries weren't about motherhood. No, she was hiding something. And cutting me out, that wasn't punishment. It was protection. For her. Because if I'd been around, I might have seen something, heard something, or worse. Jacob might have given something away. Children tell truths adults hide. I set the package gently on my hall table and breathed out slow, steady. Not triumphant. No. Mothers celebrate cracks in their children's home. But steady, like someone who knows to let the river carve its own path. Something was coming. I could feel it. And sure enough, just a week later, my doorbell rang, and there she was. Amber, standing on my porch with her hair in a rushed bun, eyes tired, voice trembling ever so slightly. "Hi, Susan," she said, trying to smile like we were just two women chatting over pies at church. Then she asked the sentence I never thought I'd hear again. "Can you watch Jacob for a few days?" And Lord help me, I almost smiled. Because when someone builds walls around you and then comes knocking on your door, life is about to reveal something.
I never knew a house could feel too quiet. When Mama passed, our home had been quiet, but that silence felt sacred, like the air itself was holding its breath out of respect for grief. This silence, it felt like warning. Like walking into a church at midnight, not because you wanted to pray, but because you had nowhere else to go, and suddenly you realize somebody else might be in the dark with you. I would sit at the kitchen table in the evening, staring at the cold dinner plate Michael never touched. He stopped coming home for meals entirely. I'd call his phone, it rang twice, then went straight to voicemail. Hours passed, then midnight, then 1. He'd walk in smelling like someone else's perfume. Not cheap perfume. Expensive, mature, bold, the kind of scent worn by a woman who knows her power and doesn't apologize for it. And every time, he'd look at me like I was the stranger. He'd mumble, "Don't start," before I could even open my mouth. So I stopped asking, "Where were you? Why didn't you answer?" I held my questions like wet laundry, heavy, cold, and clinging to my arms. But I kept them pressed against my chest, praying time would wring them out. And the school? Lord, the school became a battlefield. Shayla and Naomi were officially enemies. Teachers started calling, little girl tears became daily, the principal requested meetings, parents whispered in the hallways. And the hardest part? Naomi, my sweet Naomi. She started folding into herself. She'd sit in the back of the car after school, backpack hugged to her chest like a life raft, and whisper, "Mommy, did I do something wrong?" I almost pulled over that day because my vision blurred with tears. "No, baby," I said, voice cracking. "This isn't your fault." But children don't just listen to words. They listen to the silence around them. They feel tension before adults ever speak it. And Naomi felt the house falling apart long before I admitted it to myself. I tried talking to Michael. I practiced the speech in my head like a woman preparing to detonate a bomb without getting blown apart herself. Like, we need to communicate. The girls are suffering. We are drifting. One night he came home early, rare enough to feel like a miracle. He sat on the couch, scrolling his phone while the TV played some sports highlight reel. I wiped my palms, walked into the room, heart pounding. "Michael, we need to talk." He didn't even look up. "About what?" "Our family." He exhaled, a long, annoyed sigh, the kind a man gives when he feels inconvenienced by the existence of his own life. "What now, Rachel?" I stood there, trembling, not from fear, but from trying not to shake with everything I'd been holding.
The girls are hurting. We barely speak. You're gone all the time. Something is wrong. We need to fix this. He didn't get angry. I almost wish he did. Anger would have meant he cared enough to feel something. Instead, he stared forward, jaw clenched, eyes flat. You're overthinking. My breath caught in my throat. I'm overthinking the fact that my husband has checked out of our marriage? He flinched. Just barely. Like the truth was a match too close to gasoline. Rachel, I work. I provide. I don't have time for dramatics. I laughed. A bitter, hollow sound. What you provide doesn't matter if the family you're providing for is drowning. That's when he finally looked at me. But not with love, not with remorse, not with, baby, there's nobody but you. Just accusation. That night, he slept in the guest room. And I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of something breaking inside me, something fragile and sacred, something I thought was unshakable. Faith in my marriage. Weeks passed. Shayla and Naomi still fought at school. Michael still floated like a ghost that only materialized long enough to recharge and disappear again. And Olivia, she still smiled like everything was fine, but her eyes never stayed on me as long anymore. They flicked away too fast, like she was afraid I'd see something she didn't want me to. One rainy afternoon, she invited Naomi over again, persistent as ever. And I said yes because maybe if the girls rebuilt, the family could too. Naomi sat small on the couch while Olivia handed me a mug of tea. "You look tired," she said, softly. I stared at her, at that perfect hair, perfect makeup, perfect calm expression, and something inside me whispered, she doesn't look tired. Not like a new mother should. Not like a woman navigating crying babies and chaotic schedules and nap time breakdowns. She looked rested, satisfied, fulfilled, loved. The way a woman does when life is feeding her in all the right places. "Yeah," I finally said, forcing a smile. "It's been a lot." She placed her hand on my shoulder gently, sympathetic, almost sisterly. Too sisterly. Too sisterly. But her fingers lingered too long. And I swear on my mother's memory, I felt something icy run down my spine. Not fear. Recognition. The way two women feel each other across a battlefield long before swords ever clash. That invisible thread of tension. Female intuition sounding alarm bells before logic catches up. And in that soft, well-decorated living room, with rain tapping the windows, and my daughter sitting feet away, I felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff. No wind, no sound, just gravity, waiting. I didn't have proof. I didn't have confession. But in my bones, in that ancient, ancestral part of a woman that knows when her home is being trespassed by another woman's perfume, time, and whispers, I felt the truth circling me, like a storm tightening its grip. Something was coming. And when it hit, it would not come quietly.
Some storms don't announce themselves with thunder. Some come quiet, creeping in like fog until you realize you can't see the road you thought you knew by heart. And that's exactly how the next chapter of my life arrived. Not with a scream, with a phone call. It was a Thursday morning. Bright sky, warm breeze, nothing remarkable, just the kind of day where life pretends to be gentle. I had just dropped Naomi off at school, her little voice echoing in my ears. "Mommy, can you braid my hair like Shayla's tomorrow? Hers always looks pretty." My heart squeezed. Even in the middle of chaos, children find ways to break you softly. I kissed her forehead and whispered, "You are beautiful as you are." But she didn't look convinced. I drove home, sat on the edge of the bed, sipping coffee, trying to pray calm into my bones when the phone rang. The school. A parent's worst ringtone. "Mrs. Carter, we need you to come in. There was an incident." My stomach dropped so fast I thought I might throw up. "Is Naomi okay?"
She's not hurt physically, but we need to discuss the matter immediately. That's when I knew. The problem wasn't bruises. It was deeper. Wound you can't put ice on. When I arrived, Naomi sat outside the principal's office, red-eyed, fist balled in her little lap. Shayla was beside her, arms crossed, staring at the wall like she was too grown to be sitting there. And Olivia, she came rushing down the hallway seconds later, baby on her hip, perfect hair swaying like a movie scene. Our eyes met. That polite neighbor mask flickered, just a flash, before she fixed it back in place. "Rachel, they called you too?" Yes. They called the women who were trying to pretend their lives weren't crumbling. The secretary ushered us inside. Principal Hernandez sat behind her desk, glasses low on her nose, looking tired like she had already walked through 10 fires before 10 a.m. "Ladies, thank you for coming. We had an altercation today. Both children used hurtful language." I glanced at Naomi, who stared down at her shoes like they'd betray her if she looked up. "What kind of language?" I asked. The principal sighed. Naomi spoke first, voice tiny, trembling. She said I didn't have a real family. My breath caught. Shayla lifted her chin defiant. "Well, she said my mommy wasn't really my mommy." Silence. A silence so sharp, I felt it slice right through my bloodstream. I turned slowly toward Naomi. My baby. Soft-hearted. Never cruel. Never bold enough to attack someone without pain already pushing her. "Naomi," I whispered, voice shaking, "why did you say that?" She chewed her lip, eyes swimming. "Shayla said Daddy doesn't love us anymore, and that's why he's never home. And that her mommy said families don't break if they're real." A wave of heat rushed through me, starting at my chest and clawing up my throat like a living thing. I looked at Olivia. Her face didn't break. Not shock, not denial, not confusion. Just stillness. The stillness of someone calculating her next breath. The principal continued talking. Rules, consequences, apology exercises, but her voice felt far away, drowned out by the roaring in my ears. When it ended, Naomi ran to me, sobbing into my shirt. Shayla clung to Olivia's hand, and we walked out. 2 women, 2 children, 1 hallway stretched like a battlefield between us. Outside, Olivia adjusted the baby on her hip, lifted her chin, and whispered, almost sweetly, "You know, kids, they repeat whatever they hear at home." I froze. That wasn't concern. That was a warning dressed like a smile. I leaned closer, my voice low so only she could hear. And sometimes they expose what they're not meant to. For a moment, just a moment, her face dropped. Eyes hard, jaw tight, a crack in that polished softness. A flicker of guilt, or panic, or irritation. I couldn't tell, but I saw it. And once you see a mask slip, you can't unsee the face beneath. "Take care of Naomi," she whispered coldly. "Kids sense insecurity." "And husbands sense attention," I replied, just as quiet. A muscle in her cheek twitched. The baby cooed between us, innocent in a war she didn't know existed. "I hope you have the kind of life you're building," I whispered. She held my stare, and in her silence, I heard the truth louder than if she'd screamed it. "He's already halfway yours." She turned and walked away, and something inside me, whatever fragile string still held hope together, snapped without sound. Not broken in anger, broken in awakening. I didn't cry in the parking lot. Tears are for grief. What I felt was fire. Slow, controlled, patient. The kind a woman feels when she has been quiet long enough. The kind that doesn't burn houses first, it burns illusions. And now, I saw everything clearly. My marriage, my neighbor, my daughter's wounded heart, and myself. A woman who had been sleepwalking through the trail, praying softness could fix what truth needed to confront. I buckled Naomi into the car, brushed her hair from her face, kissed her forehead. "Mommy?" she whispered. "Are we still a real family?" I looked right into her eyes, steady, strong, with a voice I didn't know I still had. We are real, and nobody can take what's real away from us. But inside, I was already preparing for war. The quiet kind. The dangerous kind. Because I didn't just feel suspicion anymore. I felt certainty. And certainty changes everything.
There is a moment in every woman's life when silence stops feeling like peace and starts feeling like poison. That Saturday morning, I woke up with that realization sitting on my chest like a weight. Not anger, not panic. Resolve. Cold. Clear. Heavy. Naomi was still sleeping, curled up with her worn butterfly blanket, the one she refused to replace because Grandma bought it. I kissed her cheek, brushed a tear from her eyelashes she didn't even know she'd cried. Children always carry what adults pretend isn't there. I slipped downstairs, brewed coffee, the sound of the machine hissing in the quiet house. That kitchen used to feel like home. Now it felt like a stage set, props arranged around a story that wasn't true anymore. Then my phone buzzed. Text message. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Spam, probably. But then I opened it. "You don't know me, but you need to see this." A photo attachment. My fingers paused above the screen, trembling before they even touched it. I clicked. A picture filled the screen. Mark and Olivia. Not kissing, not touching, but sitting at a cafe together, his hand almost brushing hers. That familiar, leaning posture of his, the one he only used when he wanted someone to feel seen, valued, chosen, intimate in a way that didn't need hugs to scream truth. I stared until the edges of my vision blurred. Then another photo arrived. Them walking side by side down a grocery aisle, heads close, whispering. Then another, and another, each one a nail in the coffin of the woman I used to be, trusting, hopeful, devoted. A final message followed. "Check the parking lot, behind the hardware store on Birch Street. Weekdays, noon." No name, no explanation. But the universe doesn't whisper loudly unless you've been ignoring its nudges too long. I exhaled slowly, deep, steady. My hands didn't shake anymore. The truth was no longer a suspicion. It had a face, a time, a pattern, a rhythm, and it lived behind a hardware store on Birch Street. Mark came home that evening carrying tulips. Tulips, my favorite flower, though he hadn't brought them home in months. I almost laughed, the irony so thick it tasted in the air. He set them down on the counter, voice light like nothing was breaking. "Thought I'd surprise you." I studied him. The easy smile, the loosened tie, the same aftershave he'd worn since college, cedar and something crisp, a scent I once found comforting. Now it smelled like disguise. I didn't speak, didn't accuse, didn't break the illusion he was feeding me. I just boiled pasta for dinner, stirring slowly, the spoon tapping against the pot in an even rhythm. Tap, tap, tap. He leaned close, kissed my cheek. It felt like someone pressing a hand against glass, disconnected, cold. "Rach, you good?" Good. Such a small word for such a big lie. I nodded. Just tired. He accepted it, not because he believed me, but because believing me made his life easier. They always believe you when they want to keep their secrets safe. Later that night, he showered, humming, actually humming, like a man whose guilt had rhythms instead of remorse. When he crawled into bed, I pretended to sleep, but I watched him. Watched the way he turned away, hugging a pillow like he used to hold me. And I whispered into the dark, so quiet even I barely heard it. Thank you. Because secrets are only powerful when you don't have proof. Now I had proof, and power, and patience, and a daughter who deserved a mother who didn't crumble. Monday afternoon, the sun was sharp, slicing through winter air. I parked half a block away from the hardware store on Birch Street, just like the message suggested. Engine off, heart steady. I waited. At exactly 12:17 p.m., Mark's car appeared. He parked, checked his mirror like a man checking his conscience. Then Olivia's SUV rolled in minutes later. They didn't touch, didn't embrace. They didn't need to. Their bodies moved in sync, the walk of two people accustomed to sharing time they shouldn't have. He opened her door. She laughed, soft, familiar, intimate, the kind of laugh that used to be mine. They walked behind the building, out of sight. I didn't follow. Not yet. Pain is loud. Justice is quiet. I stayed still, breathing slow, watching the place where they disappeared. Not imagining, not guessing, not doubting, knowing. Truth, once seen, doesn't unsee itself. When they finally returned, they didn't look guilty. They looked relaxed, like people who had created a world where they could breathe freely, while I suffocated in mine. Olivia touched his arm, fleeting like a secret folded into skin. He smiled down at her, gentle, familiar, devastating. Then they parted, walking to their cars as if two lives were breaking apart in front of them. They drove off, and I sat there another 10 minutes, letting the world settle back into place around me. Dust doesn't fall all at once. It drifts. Slowly, inevitable. That night, Naomi curled into my lap, bedtime lights soft, her small fingers tracing circles on my wrist. "Mommy, when will Daddy tuck me in again?" I kissed the crown of her head, holding her tighter than I ever had before. "Soon," I murmured. But inside, I said, "Never like before." Because the man who comes back after betrayal is never the same one who left. And neither is the woman waiting on the other side. When she finally slept, I opened my journal, the one I hadn't touched in months, and wrote just one sentence. The storm isn't coming, it's here. And for the first time in so long, I felt strong enough to walk through it.
All right, baby. Sit down and breathe. We're stepping right back into this story. Where we left off, I had just seen the truth with my own two eyes, and it cut deeper than any knife ever could. I didn't scream. I didn't faint. I didn't even cry. Sometimes pain hits you so hard, it quiets you. It was like the world went still. The air stopped moving. The refrigerator hum disappeared, and all I could hear was the slow, heavy beating of my own heart. I watched them. My husband, my sister-in-law, laughing, close, too close. His hand touched hers like it belonged there. And she looked at him not like a brother-in-law, but like a woman looking at a man she shouldn't love, and loving him anyway. My throat went dry. My palms got cold, but I didn't make a sound. I walked back up those stairs one slow step at a time, like my bones had turned to glass and any sudden move would shatter me. When I got to our bedroom, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my hands, because I didn't trust my own thoughts. I didn't trust my anger. I didn't trust what I might do if I let myself feel everything at once. All I could whisper was,
Lord, please don't let this break me. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. I don't really know. I just sat there, trying not to fall apart. And then I heard footsteps. 2 sets. They were coming upstairs back into my space, my home, my life, like nothing was wrong. Like I hadn't just watched my heart crack open. She knocked softly first. "You awake?" I didn't answer. She walked in anyway, fake concern painted on her face. "Hey, you okay? You seemed upset earlier. Everything all right?" Her voice sounded sweet, too sweet, sugar-coated poison. And right behind her, there he was, my husband. He didn't even look guilty. That's what made my stomach twist. That calm face, like he hadn't just committed a sin big enough to shake a marriage to its knees. I forced a smile. Not because I was okay, but because a woman don't walk into war without armor. "I'm fine," I whispered. "Just thinking." She sat on the bed beside me, too close, and put her hand on mine. Her skin felt like ice to me. "Oh, don't stress. We're family. Anything you need, we're here." And I swear, in that moment, I almost laughed. Family. Family. The word tasted bitter. But I didn't confront them yet. Oh, no, baby. See, when betrayal comes from the ones closest to you, you don't fight with anger. You fight with patience, strategy. I wasn't going to explode. I wasn't going to scream. No, I was going to watch, listen, collect every little truth they thought they were hiding. Because sometimes the strongest thing a woman can do is not react. Sometimes silence is the sharpest blade. That night, I lay beside him in bed, his breathing steady and peaceful, like his conscience was clean. And I stared at the ceiling, wide awake, feeling the weight of every life decision I had ever made. I thought about my vows, my dreams, my mother's voice telling me, a good wife keeps her home together. But baby, how do you keep together a home when the rot is growing on the inside? How do you hold a marriage if the hands you're holding aren't holding only you? I turned my back to him and whispered into the darkness, "Tomorrow, tomorrow I find the truth, all of it. Because tonight wasn't for fighting. Tonight was for learning pain. And tomorrow was for power."